Hi, so this session is on the initial parts of the skeletal system. It's part of Level 2, Unit 1, Principles of Anatomy, Physiology and Fitness. Just run through the learning objectives. So in this session we'll be looking at the structures of the skeletal system. We'll be talking about the functions of the skeleton, i.e. what it does and how it's evolved. And we'll be looking at the name and the location of the major types of bone. And then we'll move on to locating different types of bone in the body. Just before we start, it might be worth you doing this, so take a blank piece of paper. If you're with other people, either with you or virtual, just have a bit of a brainstorm, see what you can come up with, see if you can write down anything you know about bones. You might know some bone names or some different parts of the skeleton or any of the functions of a skeleton. You just might know stuff. It's worth bringing them out so that can give you a platform to learn from. So just pause this for a second and just spend a couple of minutes writing down what you know. So here's some stuff you might have written down. So we're going to go through the early bits now, but let's see, you can see through the session how much you do know and how much you've already knew before. So there are 206 bones in an adult skeleton, and they're made of what's called calcified tissue. So that means they were originally made of cartilage, and then the calcium has come into the bone and made it more solid. Cartilage also still exists, and it can be known as a dense fibrous tissue. It's able to withstand compression force. You get it in various parts of the skeleton, and its main jobs are to impact shock and reduce friction and just help the skeleton move properly how it should. The three main types you find: hyaline cartilage, which you'll come across later on the ends of bones, helps it to move smoothly. Elastic, which you find to bulk up bits of the skeleton that aren't bone, for example in your ear. And fibrocartilage is the main shock absorbing, or it has a bit of slight give in, so you find it in your spine, you find it in your knee, you find it between your ribs and your sternum. It's good at shock absorption and just giving a bit of bend. So this is the functions of a skeleton. Quite useful to have these in mind. So as you go through and you learn the bone names and you learn the different types of bone, it's worth having the functions in mind, because you can then say, right, well, this is a long shape for this reason, for example. So one of the things that skeleton does is gives you a shape, so you look like a slug, and you know the human shape with the spine and the legs and the arms. It's basically based around the skeletal frame. Also, it enables you to protect certain parts of the body. So the brain is protected by the skull, the ribs are protected. The ribs protect the heart and lungs. Some of your arteries pass through bone. The spinal cord also is protected by the spine. So parts of the body that are softer and more vulnerable are often tucked in and around bones to keep them safe. Now, the bones wouldn't be much good if they couldn't stick together. So you've got ligaments which link bone to bone, and you've got tendons which join your muscles onto the bone. So this allows the joints to move in certain directions, not others, and it allows the muscles to pull the bones and move and allow you to do the exercises that you like to do. When we want to create movement, we get a muscle to pull on a bone. So if you think of any of the exercises you do, they all involve the bone moving. So one way to start thinking of this is the muscles must attach onto the bone. When they attach onto that bone, that's the bone they move. So as we go forward, we'll learn what movements, what muscles do which to what bones. One thing you might not know is that some bones produce red and white blood cells. They are in what's called the marrow, the red marrow. And this is quite key, and that's why some people have to have a bone marrow transplant when they've got a blood condition. Lastly, we can use the bones as a site for storage of things like calcium and phosphorus. Now you need calcium, for example, for initiator muscle contraction. So if you need calcium in somewhere else in the body, you can take it out of your bones. That can leave your bones feeling a bit weak. So just commit them to memory, and then when you get a chance you can pause on this slide and you can see if you can remember the functions of Skeleton and link them to their descriptions. When you've finished, you can unpause it and we can carry on. One of the things you need to develop in terms of your base anatomy is an understanding of where the bones are and what they're called. A couple of ways of doing this. If you're with somebody else, you can write the bone names on a post-it note. You can stick them on your mate. You can use a skeleton if you've got that one with you, or you can use some apps, or just label them on a piece of paper. There is a blank one you can download to check. They are on page 3 in your manual, so if you want to have a look there, you can have a look at the bone name. So see what you can learn. Pause this slide here, and then on the next slide I will show you the bone names. So here's what you could have come across. All these are on page 3 in the manual, which you can learn. So the cranium, or the skull, is around the head, protects the brain. Linked onto the spine, which runs all the way down to the coccyx. There are regions of the spine which we'll learn later. Attached to the spine, we've got our ribs, and you might see these somewhere called the costal bones. Costal bones. The costal bones join onto your breastbone here, or your sternum, which is a flat bone at the front. And coming off the top of your sternum, we've got our clavicle, which you may know as the collarbone, but the name we'll call it here is the clavicle. The clavicle joins onto the scapula. You might think of the scapula as being around the back, but actually it does come off to the side, and some of it actually comes around to the front of the body. So the clavicle joins the scapula, and then the humerus joins onto that. Okay, so when we're there, the humerus joins onto scapula. You can then see the radius and the ulna are part of the forearm, so they join on at the elbow. The radius is on the inside, the ulna is on the inside, and the radius is on the outside near the thumb. You'll notice as you flick your thumb over, it moves with it. The radius joined onto the bones of the wrist, called your carpals. I'll switch to this side now. So the carpals are over here. They're the bottom part of the wrist. In your terms of your palm, you'll find your palm is made up of your metacarpal bones. Metacarpal bones. Metacarpals into your knuckles, and after your knuckles you've got 3 rows of phalanges which make your fingers. So you've got carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. Just pause this a second and see how you get on. Try and remember them all. Once you've remembered them all, we'll unpause this and we'll do the bottom part of the body. So going down the leg, we can start in the pelvic bones. So the big flat part at the top of the pelvis is called your ilium. Your ilium. You can put your hands on. When you put your hands on the hip, it's your ilium that you put them on top of. Coming down the back, your sitting bones are known as your ischium. So your ischium are your sitting bones. So you'll feel those underneath you at the back. And then on the front, you've got your pubic bones that join up in front of you here. So the 3 bones make your pelvic girdle: the ilium, the ischium and the pubis. They come together to form a little hollow here, and joined into that hollow is your femur. So your femur then is the long bone on the top of the leg. Here it is over here. So the femur joins onto your tibia, which is your main shin bone, and your fibula off to the side. Okay, so you've got femur, tibia, fibula. At the knee joint, there's also a patella. Patella is what we call a sesamoid bone, which helps the knee to move. At the bottom of there, we find our tarsals in the ankle, our metatarsals in the midfoot, and the phalanges as the toes. So just like we've got carpals, metacarpals, phalanges, we've also got tarsals, metatarsals, phalanges. So just pause this a minute, keep going over it until you can remember. You can use the blank sheets which are available to download on the platform. Just following on from the names of the bones, we need to learn that the skeleton is divided into the appendicular and the axial skeleton. So the axial skeleton refers to the middle part of the skeleton, and appendix is stuck in something that's stuck on. So the arms and the legs are our appendages. So the appendicular skeleton refers to the arms and legs. The axial skeleton refers to the middle of the body. If we look at the axial first, you'll find the four things in the axial skeleton is the skull, the spine, the ribs, the sternum. Skull, spine, ribs, sternum. Everything else is part of the appendicular skeleton. So your arms and legs, but your shoulder girdle, your scapula and clavicle come with the arm, and your pelvic girdle, ilium, ischium, pubis come with the leg. So only those things are part of the axial skeleton. Everything else, shaded in pink, is part of the appendicular. So just to see where we are, just ask yourself if you can now identify the structures of the skeletal system. Can you state the functions? Did you manage to do them on that slide? Can you locate the major bones and the different types of bone, which we'll do a bit more in a minute. Just to carry on the learning here, you can review all that material in the manual. Check out our Kahoot site, so you might find relevant Kahoots to do on this subject. Check out the functions of bones match-up worksheet, which is on to download. If you can work with another learner, you can share and check each other's knowledge. It's a really good way of learning. And then don't forget to submit the end of day learning check and submit that to your tutor so they can check their progress. Next session we'll look at classifications of bone and the structure of a long bone. And that's it. So thanks for that. Don't forget to do the activities and we will see you on the next session.